It's 3 a.m. Again, your eyes open in the dark, and before you form that first conscious thought, you feel a tightness in your chest. Your mind is already three worries deep, and now you're wide awake, replaying a conversation from 2 weeks ago, or bracing for a day that hasn't even begun. Hi, I'm Tony Portell, and this is No Longer Stuck. And today we're going to look at one of the most often asked questions that I get, especially from first responders and people that have high stress jobs. Why is it that I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, staring at the ceiling and unable to go back to sleep? Today, that's what we're going to look at. Why we wake up at 3 a.m.
Finding grace in every step you take, for his loves and for your own sake. No longer stuck.
Like I said, this is one of the biggest issues that people face is sleep deprivation. It's not so difficult going to sleep at night for people, but for many, it's that waking up between 3 and 4 in the morning. I want to talk about why that is first and why we wake up, and then what we can do about it to fix that and change that in our life, because sleep is really, really important for us to be able to function and do all that we need to each day. So let's start with the science, because it's true. And honestly, it's kind of comforting. Your sleep isn't just one flat state. It moves in cycles, about 90-second or 90-minute cycles throughout the night. And the shape of your night is uneven. The first half of the night is loaded with deep, kind of slow wave sleep, the heavy, the restorative kind. But the back half, roughly 3 to 5 in the morning, tilts toward lighter sleep. You're closer to the surface, so things seem a little bit more emphasized. A noise, a temperature change, racing thoughts, they can all lift you up and grab your attention. And here's another piece that's really important. Right around the same time, your body is starting to get ready for the morning. So cortisol, the stress hormone, but also the cortisol is a hormone that helps us move and gives us energy. And that hormone is beginning to be released a little bit at a time to help us feel alert, to start out slow, ideally, and climb toward that time that we normally would get up in the morning. That's not a malfunction. That's your internal clock doing its job. That's your internal clock doing its job. So here's the reframe. And I want you to really hear this. Most 3 a.m. wake ups are not a malfunction. The waking up isn't the problem. That's a natural occurrence. The not being able to go back to sleep is the issue. And that's what happens next. And this gets to the real issue. Because at the center of your brain, there's a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. And it's your alarm system. We've talked about the amygdala in the past. And it's there like an alarm system to warn you of danger. It's to keep you alive. So it watches everything. And when it senses a threat, real or perceived, doesn't matter. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Heart rate goes up, breathing shallows, the thinking part of your brain is partly offline. Now, that system is a gift. It's been keeping humans alive for a long time, and it's designed to reset. Threats come, the body mobilizes, the threat passes, everything stands down, you return to rest. You were built to recover that way. But here's what happens to a lot of us. The threat never seems to stop. Old wounds get triggered by new situations. Stress at work echoes something older. An argument lands harder than it should. So the alarm stays on, low and constant, and your nervous system never fully stands down. Now, during the day, you don't notice it. You're busy. You're distracted. But at 3 a.m., the distractions are gone. The house is quiet. And that quiet is exactly the opening in your amygdala needs to run its scan. And what's it scanning for? For danger. But not just immediate physical danger that you might be thinking about. It scans for threats that are physical, psychological, financial, relational, social, emotional. These are all things that we tend to worry about. Several years ago, there was a study by two Harvard researchers, Killingsworth and Gilbert, and they found that people spend nearly half their waking hour with their minds wandering. And the wandering minds, as I've mentioned before, don't drift toward gratitude. They drift toward the negative, regrets from the past, worry about the future, and whatever grievance or fear is closest to the surface, that's what it latches onto. That's why 3 a.m. can feel like a courtroom, like you're on trial. In these times, your mind is not malfunctioning. It's doing what an unanchored mind does at night. It wanders toward the nearest wound. Now, here's the layer that almost nobody tells you. And this one might sting a little because it stung me. During the day, most of us don't face everything we feel. We don't have time. We push the hard conversations down. We park the fear about the kids. We shelve the grief and get on with the job. It feels like discipline. It feels like we're in charge. Sometimes, and I'm raising my own hand here, sometimes we even call it faith because we're taught in church to be happy and choose joy, which is great advice if you're in a place where your emotions are not overwhelming you and you can be honest and trust God. But if you're faking it, your own mind knows you don't believe and that you're just trying with positive affirmations to change the situation, that the amygdala is not going to allow you to. The brain doesn't allow push down stuff to stay buried. There's thought research on suppression showing that the things we push down during the day show up more in our dreams at night. Researchers literally call this dream rebound and REM sleep. Your brain's emotional processing mode is concentrated on the second half of your night. That's when your mind sorts the day and works through the charges and all the hard stuff. Some sleep scientists describe it as a kind of overnight therapy. So put those two things together and the timing stops being mysterious. What you wouldn't face at 2 p.m., your brain schedules for 3 a.m. And when that overnight processing touches something too hot, a real wound, a real fear, the amygdala does its job and fires you awake. A threat, real or perceived. Because the amygdala doesn't care if it's a real threat, physical threat, or if it's just a threat to your emotions or to your social safety. Whatever it might feel like, your amygdala is going to protect you. Now, I did this for about 30 years in ministry. All the pressures and the weights that I felt trying to help people and trying to come up with another sermon and financial meetings, all kinds of stuff. And I pushed a lot of my feelings down and I called it maturity. I thought the best way to handle emotions was to ignore them and suppress them. And hopefully they would just go away and you would mature out of it. But inside, I was like a pressure cooker. And it would come out sideways and overreactions to my family, to my wife, my kids, to people that I loved and worked with. I couldn't explain it. And then I would go home and have nights where I'd wake up 3 or 4 in the morning. Sometimes I didn't even know why I was awake. Here's the thing. Your conscience isn't wrong. I mean, some things do have to be faced. The only question is whether you'll face them with God in the daylight or keep expecting your brain to wrestle them alone in the dark. Those are your options. Let's think for a minute about the rest that we need. Think about everything you do when you can't sleep. You lower the thermostat, you kill every light, the phone face goes down, hopefully face down. You play white noise, you take melatonin, maybe something stronger. Most of the time, it still doesn't work, does it? And it doesn't control waking up. Here's why. Everything you adjusted is outside of you. But the problem isn't the temperature of the room. It's the temperature inside your nervous system. If your brain doesn't feel safe, no amount of environmental engineering gets you there. You can't out-arrange your way to peace when the alarm is still going off inside of you. And hear me, that's not a willpower failure. It's not a spiritual failure either. It's neurology. And naming it correctly is the first honest step toward changing it. Okay, now a question underneath the other questions. Is God waking you up? Is it something darker? Am I failing at faith because I just can't rest? I've seen people go to one or another extreme. And like most issues, there's a ditch on either side of the road. For many, they settle that this is just stress and that everything's physical and emotional. And others will say, no, this is God waking me up every time, and maybe ignoring the mental and the emotional issues. So sometimes it will be one, sometimes it'll be the other. If you're a follower of Christ, there are times that you're going to be awakened in the night. Remember Samuel's a young boy. God woke him up in the middle of the night. 3 times he went to the priest. And the old priest, and he said every time, he says, Samuel, go back and listen, because God's speaking to you. And that's what God calls us to do, to listen. There are times that God wants our attention. He wants to speak to us. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to have creative thoughts and God thoughts in the shower? Why? Because our mind is on autopilot. Anytime God can find a gap in our thinking, a gap between our thoughts, between music we're listening to, between a podcast, except for this one, or something else that's occupying our mind, God is going to insert himself into those moments. That's what he did with Elisha. Remember? There was a wind, and God wasn't in the wind, and God wasn't in the fire and the earthquake, but he was in the still, small voice behind Elijah. And God is in that still, small voice. But you might be facing a physiological issue, or a mental or an emotional issue, or it may be God waking you up so that he can deal with something in your life, or He may want to speak to you about praying for someone else. There's lots of stories in the Bible, lots of stories in my own history of God waking me up, putting somebody on my heart, pray for that person. As soon as I woke up, and I've learned over the years to obey that. And I began praying for them. And then I hear later that it was right at those moments that they were facing something. And I think this side of heaven will probably only hear a tiny bit of those. When we get to heaven, we're going to hear all the stories of how God connected this person, that person, how he called this person to pray and intercede for somebody that was desperately in need of that in the moment. So in those kind of situations, we want to obey. We want to be ready that when God speaks to us, I pray a lot at night, God, if there's anything you need me to pray for at night, wake me up, capture my attention, and let me pray accordingly. Scripture is full of God meeting people in the night watches. Remember when the disciples were straining against the storm, and Matthew tells us Jesus came to them in the fourth watch of the night. That's roughly 3 to 6 a.m., the darkest stretch of the night. And that's when he comes and meets with them and calms the storm. And I can guarantee you this, that if you'll open your life to God, that you'll invite him in, that when you go through those storms late at night, he will be there with you in the storm. And he always brings his peace and his grace and his love to envelop you. And I think that right there might be the best key in all of this that I can tell you today. So how do you tell the difference? A stress waking versus a holy one. Here's the felt contrast I've learned sitting with people in crisis. A stress waking usually comes with a racing heart, a mind that can't stop remunerating over something. It's like a loop, the same worry, circling, going nowhere. A holy waking, God waking us up at night to pray and intercede, or just to address something in our lives, is much more calming, I believe, much quieter. We don't feel this internal, we may feel a burden for who we're praying for, or something going on in somebody's life or in our own life, and we're seeking God about that, but we don't have the stress. And let's face it, sometimes we're dealing with all of it at once. There's times that I've dealt with physiological issues from something I ate, or it's been a room that's been too hot, or it's been Lori's got all the covers, or else it might be a situation where, I had a stressful day and I'm reliving that, or something I should have said and I didn't. Or sometimes, again, it's just God saying, Tony, I want you to pray for this. I want you to pray for the city. I want you to pray for the church, for this person, this family. And whatever that is, I want to obey that. I look at how life should be. Picture a calm lake early in the morning. There's maybe a few ducks out on it swimming by, but the water is as smooth as glass. That's the way we want life to be. That's the conditions that we sleep in. But then all of a sudden, boats come out, jet skis and fishing boats racing to their spots. And what was smooth and able to relax before and bring calm, now it's chaos, waves hitting, people flipping over because of all the waters are being stirred. And this is what I think is a good picture of what many times we face at night. This is why we want to face it with God. This chaos is what's happening in your mind, in your emotions at 3 a.m. when your defenses aren't up. But there's a stillness under it. Sometimes a person or a situation pressing gently on your mind, an invitation to pray, or just to listen as God speaks to you. There's many times I'll pray and say, Lord, is this you waking me up, or is this my stress? And God doesn't want to leave you guessing in the dark. He's always looking for ways to connect with you, not in some form of transaction, like we're to do this task. God will either draw you into prayer and to himself, or he'll help you to handle the weight that you're carrying so you can sleep. Both are grace. And decide in advance. If God has you up, enjoy his company and trust him to cover tomorrow's tiredness. I've prayed that many times. God, as I pray, you've got to carry me through tomorrow. And he always, always has. Waking up at 3 a.m. is not a verdict on your faith. It's not punishment. It's not proof that you're broken. When Jesus said, come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, that's his promise. That wasn't just an emotional metaphor. That's a promise about the very nervous system that's inside of you that God designed and knows how to calm and knows how to fix and knows how to use for his glory. So what do? We wake up. Let's get practical. Let me give you 5 moves that work with your body instead of against it. And don't try to memorize all 5. Start with the first one tonight. The first thing you want to do to stop fighting is to stop fighting the wakefulness. Fighting raises your arousal and digs in even deeper. Instead, name it. This is my body doing its 3 a.m. thing. And the minute you say that, things tend to calm. Your brain listens to the words that come out of your mouth. And so when you say, this is just a normal thing, this is my body reacting normally, I'm waking up maybe a little faster than normal, so I can do this. This isn't a crisis. The waking up is not the crisis. It's getting to what the issue might be. Number 2, breathe in a way that tells your body it's safe. We've talked about breathing, slow breathing out, and then breaths in and breathing out again. And just this slow breathing process helps calm everything. It can actually control your brain away from the amygdala back to the prefrontal cortex in front that controls your brain and brings peace and calm. And when you do this, it's pressing levers that you have in your nervous system that then forces you to relax. And it signals that everything is safe and you can go back to sleep. Number 3, give your wandering mind somewhere to go. What do I mean by that? Remember, an unanchored mind drifts to the nearest wound. So give it an anchor, a short familiar truth. A gratitude memory is great here. A song of worship, reading the Psalms out loud. And this isn't just spiritual bypassing. This is how your brain actually works. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity. Paul called it the renewing of the mind. Same territory. The brain that learned anxiety can learn peace, but it learns it by repetition, which means 3 a.m. practice matters more than 3 a.m. feeling. 4, if you're still wired after 20 minutes, get up. Lying in bed frustrates everything in your brain. It makes the bed a battlefield. Get up and sit in a chair, keep the lights low, turn your phone off, read and pray until you're drowsy, then go back to sleep. And everybody that are sleep specialists agree on that one. Number 5, tend the daytime, not just the night. If your alarm system stands down, the fix isn't better bedtime routine. It's dealing with what keeps the system activated in the first place. And listen, if your wake ups are nightly, persistent, and wrecking your days, talk to your doctor. Tending your body well is not a lack of faith. If you're struggling, I encourage you to reach out to us. I'd be glad to talk to you about this. I've helped a lot of people in this area. Reach out to me at Helping Others Heal. My hope, and I want to leave you with this, my hope is that you are not stuck with a 3 a.m. brain forever. The pattern that got laid down can be relayed. That's the real promise here. Not that if you believe hard enough, the waking disappears, but that God, who designed your nervous system, he knows how to bring it back to shalom, the Hebrew word for peace. It means complete contentment, that God is in control. This is what you were built for. This is what God's intention is for you. So the invitation of 3 a.m. isn't to win the fight to sleep. It's to practice in the dark, in the quiet, handing the weight that you're carrying to the one who is already awake and always awake and watching over you every day. And letting your body learn one night at a time that it's safe to rest. I pray this week that as you practice these principles, that you take a look and understand more about how the brain works, how neuroscience has answers, and how the Bible has answers. And I hope you'll look to those truths. And again, if we can serve you in any way, please contact us. If 3 a.m. has become a pattern for you, and if just pray harder or just sleep better hasn't touched it, that's exactly why I wrote the book, No Longer Stuck. It's the same brain and belief integration that will help you get through this. You'll find it at nolongerstuck.org, and you can catch it in the links to the show notes below. God bless you. Thank you for joining me today. May God grant you, according to Proverbs 3, when you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. May God bless you with sweet sleep. This is Tony Portell. You've been listening to No Longer Stuck.
Finding grace in every step you take for his loves and for your own sake. No longer